Putin to resign. As dissent in Russia appears to grow over its failures in Ukraine, Nikita Yuferev, a municipal leader in St. Petersburg, spoke to me moments after leaving court today, just after he paid a fine for speaking out against Putin. And in his first television interview, he was unafraid. When he spoke to me, he doubled down on his call for Putin to step down.
We will continue to insist on his resignation. Perhaps our words about Putin having a harmful effect on Russia and that he needs to leave power will continue to spread.
I said it's extraordinary, right? When he went to pay a fine, and it could get a lot worse than that, he came out and he doubled down. And so I asked him, why is he speaking out right now, taking these incredible risks? And here's what he told me.
I have two little children. I don't want for them to go through what I am going through in 15, 20 years. Namely, to be afraid of going out on the streets to speak their minds at demonstrations and protests. I don't want them to fear retaliation from the police.
He's doing it for his children. As I said, Nikita Yuferev is taking a huge risk by speaking out like this. So he's already been fined. He paid that fine today. He could face jail time next. But he went on to tell me that he thinks that there has been a shift in public opinion as Putin's war has continued.
We received words of support from those who voted for us. And then there are completely unknown people who have offered to pay off our fines and legal fees. One person offered to buy me a ticket to Mexico so I could move my family, my kids, and even my cats to a place where I would feel safe. Of course, this is all anecdotal. We refused, but it shows just how much support we are getting and how our ideas are being accepted by Russian society.
As that support grows, or appears to grow inside Russia as he describes it, Germany's chancellor, who just spoke to Putin, told reporters today that he said there's no indication that Putin's attitude regarding the war has changed. But Putin's military situation has grown more dire. Ukraine's military reports that Russian shelling has significantly decreased in the Kharkiv region. That's where Ukraine's counteroffensive is still in full force. And Putin tonight, though, does have major support from one superpower, the Chinese President Xi Jinping. Full force now behind Putin, at least what we're going to see, about to meet with him for the first time since Putin's invasion. That will happen in just hours from now. Nick Payton-Walsh is out front. He is live in Kharkiv, Ukraine. And Nick, what is the latest you're seeing on the ground there?
Still startling, I think, the advances that Ukraine have managed to pull off here in the past week, capitalized upon by their President Volodymyr Zelensky going to the recently liberated city of Izium. We're beginning, though, to get a flavor of Russia's response. It seems to be towards infrastructure to ruin ordinary daily life for Ukrainians here. That of the electricity here in Kharkiv hit over the past days is beginning to come back, and tonight we're hearing about cruise missiles hitting the central city of Kryvyi Rih, potentially damaging dams there and causing intense flooding. But frankly, the story still is exactly how Russia managed to lose so much territory so fast. Here's today's visit. This is what confidence in victory looks like. Delighted swagger from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky touring the liberated city of Izium. A commander-in-chief greeted here as another human. The smiles for this president as genuine as the danger. Listen here, and you can hear explosions as he talks. It may be possible to temporarily occupy our territories, he says, but it is certainly impossible to occupy our people. These last months have been extremely hard for you. This is why I ask you, take care of yourselves, because you are the most precious thing we have. It is a victory that came at an as yet unspecified cost, this moment of silence for those dead. What he sees, utter devastation, part of why Russia is losing. It's hard to occupy and defend a city in this ruin. It's hard to imagine the Russian army's state of mind when it left behind this much of its armor. And what Zelensky did, another reason Ukrainian morale seems to remain high. Russian President Vladimir Putin is usually hundreds of miles away in Moscow when he gives out medals. This past startling week, a tale of two nations and a gulf in enthusiasm for the fight. Moscow's manpower crisis so acute, this video is apparently from a Russian prison, allegedly showing the man called Putin's chef, Yevgeny Prigozhin, personally recruiting convicts for the front line. He tells prisoners that war is hard, they can't desert, get taken prisoner, drink, take drugs, or have sex with flora, fauna, men or women in the fight. An undesirable message to an undesirable crowd. Russia increasingly less looking like a nation united in what it won't even call a war yet. Even Putin's stooges turning. Here, Chechen leader Ramzan Kadyrov again undermining the Kremlin that brutally put him in power. If you ask me, I would enact martial law and exhaust all possibilities to end the conflict with these demons. I'm like a volunteer for Russia, he said, writing later, quote, "We are at war with the whole NATO bloc." The unthinkable is happening. Russian dissent and criticism growing, but not yet at the speed of Ukrainian advances. Startling to see this sort of Russian dissent, and it comes in often odd forms in that authoritarian society. Those two people you heard from Russia, Yevgeny Prigozhin, Ramzan Kadyrov. Prigozhin, indeed it is him in that video, behind so many of the private mercenary schemes reportedly that helped Putin's geopolitical goals around the world. Ramzan Kadyrov, part of Putin's very brutal wars in Chechnya, the man who brutally has held sway over that area. Now in public, making policy decisions, being part of the bid to try and salvage this disastrous military campaign. That is a form of dissent, frankly, in a world where the Kremlin controls every idea in the public sphere, or at least tries to, and it's because of this unprecedented military failure. It is staggering, frankly, 6 months into the war, to be talking about the collapse like we've seen over the past weeks, and it's left Ukraine now with a much smaller war to fight and a much larger task ahead of Moscow to try and regain control of the narrative and stifle down the beginnings of dissent we're seeing here, simply because of how badly managed this operation has been by Russia. Erin?
Nick, thank you very much. And of course, in the video that Nick showed, I hope it stood out to all of you that the man who's recruiting for Putin in the prison in that apparent video called it what it is, a war. Out front now, Democratic Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill. She's a member of the House Armed Services Committee and a former Navy helicopter pilot, as well